Hello and welcome to our 9th lecture and week Internet Technologies. The Internet technologies that make it possible to connect all of the devices, all of the people around the world and make them alive within a digital world and communicate to each other. But how did we get here and what influenced the development of the Internet and the connection between the computers? The first problem that was being solved is that the computer that could make complicated calculations even in those years that they filled in the size of a room. They dealt with very difficult mathematical problems, and one problem could be solved by a length of a week. So the scientists tried to find a way how could they split this complicated mathematical problem into sub-problems and compute it using the machinery with a higher speed and a lower time spent for the whole computation, so that they could spend 3 times less time for solving the same problem by using 3 computers instead of 1. So they have introduced the way of communication between different computing powers, and that was the first time when computers were connected to each other and were able to interchange with their information. So what is the Internet, the basic concept and the definition? The Internet is the connection of a smaller network computers that are presented around the world. So it's a whole system or a grid that make it possible to send a message from one different location of the subnetwork to another subnetwork with using of different technologies and instruments. The first need, as I have said, was the computation of a very difficult and complicated mathematical problem, and it was successfully done even in 1950s. But then the problem arises to send not only mathematical problems between the different computational powers, but sending the data that could be operated with the computers located far from each other. And the first endeavor was by the ARPANET system, the Defense Department subsidiary that was developing the way how the data could be transferred from one computing system to another. And the first network consists of only 4 points on the west coast of United States. In 1957 and in 1969, ARPANET emerged and organized the infrastructure for data transfer and started to expand the number of subsystems that could connect to each other. The main problem resides in the equipment that they were using, so that when you use the same equipment from one manufacturer to send and receive the data, there is no problem. But problem arises when different manufacturers try to operate with the data and send to each other. They have to produce some protocol, the way or a rule that can be applied for the data transmission. And the ARPANET was initially the designer of such a protocols. The problem with the connection of the computers was that they already used the telephone lines to send and receive data to each other. And the general leap was that a transmission from the circuit interchange into a packet interchange of the data. So if we will take a look at this slide, we will see that to make it possible to connect one telephone on one side and another telephone on another side, you have to make an uninterrupted circuit connection between these two phones. And the work of the operators in the telephony company was to plug in two wires into the same wired connection, uninterrupted circuit that make it possible to keep a live connection between two phones. But it was not sufficient for the data interchange between many different locations, because then it would require a very fast switch between all of the stakeholders or all of the participants of the data interchange. So the ARPANET introduced the transmission of the data, but not using the interchanging of the wire connection, but by switching the data packets. The data packet in the primitive way is like an envelope that contains the hidden information from where the data have been sent and to where this data should be delivered. So that looks the very primitive a packet within an internet could be. And this alternative way have changed tremendously and drastically the way how could all of the participants within the same network change the data between each other at a very high speed.